This is ADX Files, and I'm your host, Alyson Dunlop. Today I'm talking with Fotoula Adrimi, and I hope that I've pronounced that properly, a Greek shaman who lives in Glasgow and teaches shamanism, meditation and healing. In 2005, she had a spiritual awakening. From 2006 to 2008, she received a vast teaching on the process of spiritual awakening and embodied ascension through direct transmission from Isis, the representation of the Egyptian mother goddess, sometimes known as Iset in ancient Egyptian. This is the path of the living light, also known as the path of Isis, that was practiced in the golden times of ancient Egypt, Atlantis and Lemuria. Fotoula has been teaching and practicing this system for 10 years now. She describes herself as a channel through which divine love, power and awareness can flow. Yassas, and a very warm welcome to the show, Fotoula. I'm so glad that you could join me.
Thank you very much, Alyson. It's an absolute joy to join you. Absolutely, thank you.
Well, it's great that you could join me. Now, tell me about your spiritual awakening.
Yes, well, what happened to me was that as a child, I was clairvoyant, I was very connected. I was raised in the Greek Orthodox faith. My parents were not religious at all, but I found that I could see Mother Mary, and I had this beautiful communication with God as well. I remember myself in church just looking at the beautiful pictures, and I could see the energy flowing to me and all the love that was there. But when I was a teenager, something changed, and I became very much focused on my university exams and shut down that channel, basically because of fear that wasn't present when I was a child. And then I had a normal life. I went to university. I did a postgraduate degree in Paris, and ended up in Scotland. And I was married, and I had a job in the public sector. And something really happened out of the blue. I had this initiatory dream, and in the dream I was buried in a coffin, and I found myself there, and I could see that I needed to come out of this coffin, and I found the strength to just break through the coffin and all the earth, and I came out, and I said, then I have been dead. For all these years I have been dead, but I'm now alive. And my family was there, and I was a bit concerned that they would think I was dead. And I said, no, this is my life now starting. And I said that, and within a few months, things changed in my personal life. I found, again, synchronicities there. I went to get a book on emotional intelligence because I was interested in that. And instead, I got a book by Betty Shine. And this book was all about spirit. And everything that this book said, I just knew to be true. And I started practicing the exercises, and I had so much success with them, and I knew I had done this before. So I had these inexplicable experiences that were happening during my meditation, and then life was opening doors for me, bringing me in touch with the right people, the right teachers, and places where I could learn so much more. I mean, it's wonderful. In Scotland, you have such a deep tradition of spiritualism that we don't have access to in Greece. Probably that's why I ended up being here. And somehow I went to the library, and just a woman looked at me and she said, I have to tell you something. You might find it strange, but do you know that we have a spiritualist church in Stirling, which I didn't even know what it was. And I ended up going there, and then one thing led to another. So this is how it all happened.
Goodness.
Yes, and my life completely, my personal life completely shattered, and I had to go through. It was really a death experience because my life now looks so much different from those years. I'm no longer married. I don't work in the public sector anymore. I do my own work that absolutely sings to my heart, and it's a very, very different type of existence.
It certainly sounds like it is, and you've mentioned there a couple of times that death experience in the dream, and your divorce and things like that, which is very similar. And these are all like awakenings, aren't they? The death of one thing and the beginning of something else. It seems to be quite a shamanic thing.
It is really, because the previous experience of my life was constructed based on what maybe my parents or my culture said I should do. Even going to study town planning was something that my parents wanted me to do, because their family business is based on surveying and town planning, and it really served me for the years I did work in it, and I really enjoyed it. But yes, I have obviously seen this pattern of death in my life, and I think it is very shamanic. Because we have to find that place of authenticity. Who are we really? And looking back, I can see all these small deaths that happened. I never thought I would leave Greece. I never thought I would get divorced. I never thought I would give up my town planning job and the security that offered. And here I am practicing shamanism in Glasgow, and doing all this wonderful spiritual work with the Celtic people, and I would never have imagined that would be my life.
2006 till 2008, I think it is, you received teachings from Isis. What kind of things were you taught?
So the Isis path was another one where I didn't really know much about. I just knew that when I was a child, as I said, I mentioned Mother Mary, I had a real interest in ancient Egypt, and there weren't many esoteric books in Greece, in my hometown at the time. But I would go into these journeys that now I know were shamanic journeys, and this woman with wings was accompanying me, and we were going into the Egyptian temples. Because my room faced the sea, I knew on the other side of that ocean was this wonderful place, Egypt, that I was absolutely fascinated about. But then I didn't see Isis for all these years. And what happened is I was holding a healing group in my house, and we were all meditating, and I felt Isis. She came through and she said, "I would like you to be my teacher," meaning that the channel who would be teaching her work. And it's all to do with awareness, it's all to do with awakening, it's all to do with really stepping onto our soul path that is maybe not just this life but many lifetimes. It's all about the opening of the heart, the embodying as well of the goodness that we are, of embodying our divine spirit. And it works with energy, so there you have the very high vibrational energy. It works with chants, and the chants are in light language. They have a vibration, so when you chant these words, you just feel you're in a different space. It enables you to become aware of yourself, of life, have a bigger perspective, but also aware of a bigger picture of who you are as a soul. It's very beautiful. It's very deep. As you said, I've channeled it in these years, but actually I've never stopped channeling it because Isis keeps coming. She keeps adding more information, and in those 2 years, she said, you only have 25% of what actually will become this path of the living light. So I continue with it, and I keep channeling it, and I keep practicing it myself in my everyday life. So yeah, and Isis gave me a perspective about it. So she said, in our soul development, as we become more and more aware and awaken into our own living light, what happens before we can actually awaken fully? We have to leave something back, to give something back to the earth reality. So she said that in some ways, before you can really, step forward into your own light, is also a path of service where you offer something back. And I think in some ways, maybe what I'm doing is offering something back. Is my way of serving.
Okay, so that is the path of living light, to give something back.
Yes, this is what I feel, is that by practicing these very beautiful teachings, and teaching these teachings as well, is obviously a contribution. What I feel is a contribution to raise our collective consciousness, because although people come and we practice these teachings together, I feel that what we're doing goes far wider than the few of us that come together. I feel that the light that is coming into the earth at this time hopefully makes a contribution to our collective consciousness. So,
you've also been on pilgrimages to ancient sites. Where have you been?
Oh, it's a big list, Alyson.
Is it a big list?
So,
well, what are some of the places that you've been?
Yeah, I love going to sacred places that call me, and it's almost like an invitation. Especially, my first trip was in Egypt, as doing spiritual work there, and it was in 2006. And what happened there was that I had a dream, and I saw myself in front of a stone altar, and I knew that was in Egypt, and I had to go there. And what I did is I had all these beautiful teachings. So I went into the pyramid, and what happened there, it was nobody else was there, which is rare. Usually there's a lot of people there in the Great Pyramid. And I found myself completely alone, and I went up to the King's Chamber, stayed there again, just being there by myself. I was a little bit, the human part of me, you could say, the little Fotoula, was a little bit frightened, because I'm here by myself in this place, and it's daunting. It really was daunting. And I stayed for an hour, and then I just thought, I'm just going to leave. And as I'm going back, climbing down the Great Gallery, I just heard these sounds being sounded over and over, and I started singing these sounds, because again, there was nobody there. And as I started singing, the pyramid became alive. The energy was flowing just through the whole place and through me. And I just heard the voice saying, this is the chant that unlocks the Great Pyramid. So I'm taking now, sometimes Isis comes in a dream and she says to me, take a group to Egypt. So I've been to Egypt with groups for a few times now. And what happens there is I will be chanting these chants to really feel the energy of the place and do this work. But our work is also, sometimes we see sites or I'm called to a site, and we see that there needs to be some energetic cleansing, because these sites were misused at some point. I find this sometimes in standing stones. And I could see at some point people did sacrifices there. It wasn't the original people who built the sites. That happened later, according to the information that the spirits gave me. But I could see, blood going over the stone, and I'm thinking, what do you want me to do? But always the information comes, and we etherically clean these sites and then connect them back to the grid, and it feels absolutely beautiful. I've been going to Kilmartin, is one of my favorite places in Scotland, and to really work with the sites there that are so powerful and so beautiful.
Oh, I love Kilmartin. It's one of my favourite places too.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's magical, yeah.
And in Scotland, we have so many places. I went to Orkney, to the Standing Stones there, and then down to Stonehenge. And thus again, synchronicities happened, because when I went to Orkney, the spirit said afterwards, you need to go to Stonehenge and take all the work that you did in Orkney, all that energy down to Stonehenge. And of course, I know there's no access directly to the site, so I wrote 3 times to English Heritage saying I really want to do a ceremony there with my group. And eventually we got access, we got private access to go and do that. It was absolutely great, and just like sometimes you have to persevere and also surrender. I just thought if it's meant to happen, it will happen.
Definitely, and it's quite unusual for them to allow access. I think there's one Druid group that's allowed, but that's great that you got that.
Yes, yeah, it was so good. And I only had 1 day annual leave then, because I was still working for the city council, and somehow I said to the spirits, I don't have time, I can't take time to go to Stonehenge and do all this work. And somehow there was this meeting organized in Winchester, which is really close, so I managed to get some time for the meeting and some time for my work with my group. So it all just happened in divine timing. And this is sometimes, this is what sometimes happens in shamanism. It just, you just have to go with the flow, trust in life and surrender. If it's meant to happen, you put all the effort, and I wrote the letters and persevered, but, and sometimes the doors open, and if they don't open, you just accept that, okay, that's absolutely fine too. You just go with the flow.
I think that when something is for you, that's very true, that doors do open, and when it really isn't meant for you, you'll find difficulty in getting anywhere.
Yeah. And I got myself, the Standing Stones is a favorite places for me. I feel very at home there. Yeah, so I went to France and the Cathart sites there, and actually connected with them. Le Trois Maries sur la Mer, it was a big place for me, because I had connected with Mary Magdalene in Iona. That's another absolute favorite place, and I have been running retreats in Iona, and it's just another wonderful place for me. But then went to France there, and other places. Well, I went to Peru, a lot of places in America, basically because of my shamanic work, and New Mexico, Arizona, and California. I did 3 vision quests in America, where you go out in nature, and it's a lovely place to go out in nature, basically because the weather is really good. So you basically can stay out there, because during the vision quest you are just by yourself. It's a ceremony, the shamans hold you, but you go out there with no tent, nothing, just what you need, maybe a notebook, a rattle, a drum, and there is no rain in the desert, so it's a good place to go and do that work. And one of my favorite places was Nepal and Tibet, and one of my teachers is a Himalayan shaman, and we're actually organizing a trip to Tibet for 2020. So when I go there, we did a lot of shamanic work mainly, but also a lot of meditation and mantra work, because a lot of people don't realize that the shamans work with mantras there, and they meditate quite a lot, and that is part of the shamanic healing. So it's not something separate.
Okay. Now, since March equinox 2012, you've been teaching the Rays of Divine Consciousness meditation practices. It says it's a way of balancing our spiritual DNA, and that this was a gift you received from Archangel Gabriel, as well as Isis. What happened when you received that gift?
Yes, it's interesting. I had a group in Kilmartin. We did a fire walk, and we did some work in the stones. And then what happened was some of us decided to go up the hill of the Nad. And it's a very ancient hill, as you know, and there are obviously some prehistoric parts to the hill as well. There is a footprint, and it's supposed to be one of the ancient places of where the kings of Scotland at some point may have been crowned. I don't know if this is just a local folklore, but it is supposed to be one of these places. And so I'm up there in Danad, and we have just done a ceremony where we put our bare foot on the footprint that is on the rock, and we made a pact with Mother Earth to support Mother Earth, and it's almost like some sort of remnant idea that the ancient kings would when they would put their foot there on the footprint. I was shown how they would dedicate their life and their work to the land and to the people. So we did something similar. And then there is also a stone chalice there. So we offered sacred water to the chalice, and then went up to the very, very top. And we had finished our ceremony, and we're sitting there in circle, and I feel this presence, and I feel Archangel Gabriel, which I hadn't worked with before, and he said that he wanted me to do what is called the opening of the crown. And I said, I don't know how to do that. And as soon as I said these words, I just knew the steps of what I had to do. So I said to everybody, I really don't know very much about this. It is coming through. And if you want to check with yourselves if you would like that. So people decided, yes, we're going to have this done. So somebody sitting on a ledge there, and I'm on top of them, balancing on this rock, and taking and doing the steps of the opening of the crown, and the energy is just absolutely amazing. And we really don't know what it's all about, but we're going with the steps. And then Archangel Gabriel said, this is the initiation to the first ray of divine consciousness. So as we're driving back and we're sitting there, people themselves were starting getting information as well as me, because the group was quite connected, and we're talking about it, and we're channeling what is coming through, and there are 12 rays plus another ray, maybe a master ray, which is the 13th ray. But the 12 rays are all about balancing our spiritual DNA. What Archangel Gabriel said is that we have these 2 DNA strands right now, but initially he said that we had actually 12 strands, and all these different rays are actually aspects of divine consciousness that are bringing us back to this space of oneness. And they said the 2 strands we have right now One is orientated towards oneness, the other one is orientated towards separation. So we have this duality taking place, one strand taking us more into the separation, the fear, the doubt, all the conditioned mind, and the other one is our it's also our human right, is also part of who we are, and is actually taking us into the space of oneness. So what I do is, for a few years, I ran a retreat on the rays of divine consciousness, where I take people back up to the NAD, connecting again, doing what I did in 2012, and then channeling the rays of divine consciousness. We all come together. We bring the rays into our body. And balancing the DNA, and together with this work, at the same time, we do a ceremony during this retreat of karma purification, and this is a very powerful ceremony, and I found it powerful for myself as well. What happened in my family line, there was some family karma, really deep family karma, that was coming up. So the first ceremony I did of the karma purification was quite a bit uncomfortable. That was bringing so many things in my family. And I knew the ceremony was working, but not the way that I wanted it to work. But I was not in charge of that. It was working for the highest good. And then the year after that, we're back in the retreat, back doing the race purification, the karma purification ceremony. And then after that, everything became perfect. And I now enjoy such a wonderful, loving relationship that is just so precious with my parents and with my sisters, that like a family, we all had our own issues, but it's like all this have gone. The ego that we all had and wanting to be right about things has gone, and what has remained is the love that was underneath. And I do believe that was part of this work. So it works in many ways. There is work in many ways. They work in our life, and they work also in our spiritual side too. That has been my experience. And what I do is once a month, I have a race transmission. So those of us who have gone through the retreat, we gather together and we do a transmission, a distant transmission. Anybody can take part. All people have to do is just lie down with the intention of receiving the rays, and we just channel the rays for ourselves, and at the same time the rays flow to the earth and to anybody who wants to receive them.
This is ADX Files, and I'm your host, Alyson Dunlop. And I'm speaking this week to Fotoula Adrimi. Fotoula, welcome back. Now, congratulations on the recent publication of your Golden Book of Wisdom, Ancient Spirituality and Shamanism for Modern Times. Tell us about this book.
I started writing based on information that Spirit gave me, and it took me 3 years to put the book together. The actual writing was very easy to do because it was just flowing through, but then I realized spirits have no, well, my spirits, maybe other spirits do, but they didn't have really punctuation, and they were giving me all this information, but it had to be split into chapters and paragraphs and everything. So it took me about another, maybe year and a half to put the whole thing together in a way, because I'm a perfectionist as well, in a way that really reads very well. And the book is split into 4 parts, and the first part is the shedding of the skin, because a lot of the times, maybe me initially as well, I thought I would like to do the spiritual work because I'm fascinated by talking to spirits, and I have all this information coming, and I love healing, etc. But then I realized that actually to to become this clear channel. The person that needed the healing was myself, which is obviously something, a continuous process, and the person that needed to become aware was myself as well. And I found different ways of shedding this skin, the snake that shed its skin, and that's part of looking at different aspects of life, of looking at death, illness, life from a spiritual perspective, karma purification, life purpose. I bring some of my own tradition, the ancient Greek tradition there as well, to the material, in a way that people can understand it and work with it. So this is the first part, shedding skin, and then the second part is much more about connecting with spirit. So I call the second part the flying serpent. And in this part, we go up to the sky, to the spiritual realms. We work with our guides. We talk about shamanic journeying, about initiation. What is spiritual initiation? How can we access our own spiritual initiation? About parallel realities, because in shamanism, we don't just see the physical reality around the earth, but there are parallel worlds or parallel universes that we access, so we can bring more healing and more light to our own reality and more awareness to our own reality back to life. So I explain that side. And then the third part is bringing all that awareness to earth, and that's where I talk about the DNA, our body, embodying shamanism, embodying spirituality. I talk a lot about in this part about incarnation and reincarnation, the purpose of our life, the different existences that we have lived. And finally, the final part is actually about building a strong foundation for our spiritual work through the sun, the moon, working in sun ceremonies, with moon ceremonies, working with stargates that exist here on earth. I find them on standing stones and sacred sites, working with the divine and the Holy Spirit. And finally, what is awakening, and how can we access that side in this life and through our spiritual work.
That sounds like a tremendous book with a lot of knowledge in it. Tell me about the prophecy of the new Gaia.
So what I felt, I love seeing this in different cultures, but when I trained for the Sweat Lodge tradition, what I have been given, as one of the stories I was given, was there was going to be a time in our Earth evolution where things were going to start to change, and we were going to start to realize there is something more in life, and the way we live our life is not serving us. The prophecy said that our tribe, the words that were used is that our human tribe is sick with depression, unhappiness, sadness, illness, greed. No matter how much we have, we think we don't have enough. So all these things are mentioned there in a prophecy, and they said there will come a time when the goddess, the white buffalo calf woman, is coming in, and you have the birth of the white buffalo, and also a white buffalo being born out of a white buffalo, and this has actually happened. So the prophecy is saying that the times that we actually are living right now are times of transition. And in my own work, I've been more and more encouraged by the spirits to bring healing and light to the earth. And he's saying, this is my job. Other people maybe feel there is other ways to help the earth. We all have our own way. But what it's basically important is to dream the new earth, to think about, visualize and imagine this beautiful reality that we, this Garden of Eden that is there for us, maybe in another dimension, and visualize it as what we want to offer to our descendants, the people who will come after us. And then in my work, what I teach is, and that is something that Spirit has given me, is a practice called earth retrieval. Because in shamanism we have soul retrieval, which is for ourselves, but in earth retrieval, it's like holding the earth with our hands in this new reality, really seeing it in our mind's eye, really feeling it, what it would be, the waters to be clean, and the earth, and all these forests, and everybody being in touch with themselves, and this transformation taking place, and seeing it, not seeing the earth as polluted or as suffering, but seeing as complete and whole, and the earth complete and whole, and then planting this like a seed to our current reality. So this is my work with earth retrieval, and I feel it's something that is quite important, because in shamanism, even if somebody comes to us and says, I suffer from all these ailments and I want a shamanic healing, or I have this sadness, or whatever it is, these emotional issues, we never see them as sick. We see them in their divine light, because this is what we need to visualize, see the person in wholeness. And the same thing with the earth, see the earth completely whole. And in the ancient Egyptian tradition, it's very similar. What Isis has given me, she said that, in the myth, there is the good king or seer, and these are the golden times of the earth, the times of the heart. And this good king is then killed by his jealous brother Set, and Set represents the mind. In our human experience, when we are born as infants, we're just a bundle of love. Everybody, seeing a baby, you just see that it radiates love and light. And okay, maybe we don't feel that when the baby is screaming, but but it's just the pure consciousness there. And then we grow up, and the mind comes, and the mind brings all these doubts and fears and difficulties and sadness and separation. So the heart has to go away. In the ancient Egyptian tradition, the heart goes away to the underworld, because the world doesn't support the heart. We feel maybe at the time that we can't have the open heart because we'll get hurt. So the mind justifies being in charge. But then we realize, goodness, this really doesn't serve me. Just staying in the mind alone doesn't really serve me. And there is something else. There is something else that I need to find. And there comes Horus. And Horus, for me, is the spirit, is the spiritual warrior that he has to actually make war with the mind. So in the myth, Horus has to battle with Set. So the spirit, as we have the spiritual awakening, we're coming so many times in battle with our mind that wants to say, what you're doing is stupid, or there is no justification for spirituality, or why do you want to even do this? Aren't you happy? Just have your job and just stay in the things as they are. But something inside us is telling us, no, I really want to find out more about myself, and this threatens the mind. So we have to rise out of this battle. And Horus is maybe the new era, where having learned as the human tribe what the mind does and what destruction it can cause, we find the spirit, and through the spirit we transform our reality. So this is the way I see this prophecy of the new Gaia.
Oh, that sounds marvellous. It actually sounds very Gnostic in nature. There's a lot of what you've said there really struck a chord with what I've looked at in Gnosticism.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
I haven't studied Gnosticism, but I think this prophecy exists in many traditions.
Yes.
And I came across it was the Native American tradition, and then just through the Isis work, explaining to me the myth and the what is happening in ourselves and in the world right now.
Yeah. What is soul sound activation, and how do you achieve it?
Okay, so what I have felt is that we all have a vibration, and I say to people sometimes, your name, even your name that you identify with in the world, has a vibration. We're all energy, even though we are physical beings, and our person, who we are right now, has a vibration. But there is something about the soul vibration, and the soul, to me, has no beginning and no end. So I see that the soul, this eternal aspect of us, also has a vibration that we need to connect right now. And a lot of us are actually and that was part of my journey, are actually not listening to our soul, or we're not in touch with our soul, we're in touch with our mind. And through the spiritual work, my teaching spirits have said to me, there is this eternal part of you, and it really helps if you embody and come in touch with your sound, with your vibration, with your frequency. So this is a part that started for me basically last year, and until then I wasn't doing anything like that very much. Well, not at all, really. Just had an inkling about this. So these star beings of the light, and it was from the Sirius star to start with, but then there were other ones as well. They came and they said, we want to do a transmission of energy, and they gave us various exercises to do in my meditation group. And we all gathered together, and we were just transfixed of what we were receiving. The energy was just amazing, absolutely wonderful. And they asked us to work with crystals as well. So we're doing this work. And then they said, okay, now we want you to work with the soul activation, the soul sound activation, the sacred sound of your soul. And one of these gatherings, they gave every person a sacred sound they needed to work with. And it was really beautiful the way it happened. First, we worked with the clear quartz crystals. And then we had to see ourselves that our body, our skeleton was crystal. So in some ways we were radiating, we were the crystal, we were radiating the energy, we were amplifying the energy. And then they went to each person and they gave this sound that they said, then, chant this sound in your meditation or wherever you connect, and you will feel this energy coming, and it's a way to be more in touch with your soul. So this is what we did, and sometimes it helps when we do this work to come together in a group. I mean, we can all meditate also in our own house, of course we can, but the group energy amplifies the experience. It's almost like all of us coming together. We together as a tribe create something special. We work as the one heart. in this ceremony, and we're claiming this as the human tribe. And the group energy, the star beings have said, actually makes the whole experience more powerful. So I'm doing a retreat in June in the summer solstice to do this work. They said to me, organize a retreat where we can really work with a group and work with this soul connection and bringing the gifts of our soul to the earth. One thing they said is that we see ourselves right now as human beings having this earthly experience, which is very important. But at the same time, and other tribes say that too, the Native Americans say that too, is that we have a star heritage. We are really not from here, but we have come from the stars, from different constellations. And we're all from different places, so we have to get to get along with each other. So it's not so easy, and we learn from this interaction. But they said that when you activate your soul sound, and you get in touch with your soul, you will realize that you have gifts inside. We all have different gifts that we bring to the earth. As good guests, when we go somewhere, we want to bring to our guest a gift for to our host, sorry, not to our guest, so to our host, a gift if we're invited to a place. So we are here on earth, and we have come to earth, and we have these gifts of our soul that we would like to activate and embody. And through the spiritual work and this work, we access our soul sound, we activate these gifts, and then we bring them through into our lives.
So you've also talked about parallel lives and other dimensions. Just let's round up the show with just having a chat about that.
Okay, so parallel lives. So it's really interesting because so we see ourselves here in this life. We're conscious of who we are right now. But I see our being as infinite. So we may be living here at this moment, but there is another part of us that is maybe having another experience. It could be living the same life, but has made different choices. So we have made these choices in this life. We know the consequences of these choices. Hopefully we can see how our life has unfolded to arrive at this moment. Another side of us is living the same life, but has made different choices that ended up in a different way. The life has ended up in a different way. And I do feel somewhere there is, let's say, a golden path where we live a life making all the choices that are really beneficial to us. And how does this golden life happens is by having all these experiences right now. So I sometimes see that we have lived a life, and it's almost like come back rather than going to another life. Live the same life, try again. And I've seen this with the earth as well. At some point, as I was just walking down the street, I had this notion that I had been here before in this life. As Fotoula, I had been here before, and at that time, this was in another life. The earth, we didn't manage to save the earth. You know, with the pollution, the destruction of the planet was so bad that we didn't make it. But in this parallel life, in this current life, some of the parameters have changed. So there are a lot of new children coming forward. And I see that with the young people that I work. They are so ahead of us. They're just so aware. And some of them are just very, very, wise old souls. and the spirits had said to me, we have changed some of the parameters. There's a lot of wise beings incarnating as new children, and this didn't happen before. So we are reliving the same experiment, and hopefully this time we will make it. I do think so.
I do hope so as well. I have actually noticed that as well, with younger people being much more spiritually inclined and very, very wise, and having lots of spiritual knowledge. But unfortunately, we've reached the end of another wonderful ADX Files. Thank you so much for being my guest this week, Fotoula. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much, Alyson, for inviting me. It was wonderful to share my work with all the people who listen to the show, and it was an absolute honor to be on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.